Generators 101, just simply, on the left here you have an armature and a stator, and when they turn around and they break magnetic fields, that makes electricity. Here's a little bit more complicated. You have armatures, you have rotors, you have stators, you have an exciter. Point here, guys, is that it's not a battery. It makes electricity. When you turn on a light switch, it has to manufacture the electricity for that light to appear. So it's not an easy, it's not an easy item to understand unless you know the complexity of the device itself. Okay, identify the generator system. This is the key, basically, for your inspection process. Locate and inspect the generator and the components. Eyeball, take a look. We'll get into it a little bit more later on. What do I need to look for? Okay, next thing is verify the system on the property survey through documentation. Big item. If a pool is not, if someone goes there and looks and there's a pool in the backyard and it is not on the survey, bang, it's a deal breaker for a lot of the banks. That will be the case now with generators. The towns want to see the generators on the survey. They want to see them itemized as a line item. It will be a taxable item if it is not yet already in some villages. Okay, determine the condition of all components. That's a safety issue. That's what you guys are all about. Really, number one is this safe? How does it look to me? Is this acceptable, or do I need to ring the bell here? So that's what we'll be talking about a little bit. Confirm the systems adhere to codes and regulations. We're going to be getting into that. There are some regulations that are so deep we'd bore ourselves going over them, and some that are realistic, and we'll talk about those. Okay, locate and visually inspect the components. Here's a generator. Look for the generator at the side of the rear yard. Very important. Very few towns and villages will allow a generator to be in the front yard. So where are they? On the sides and in the back. Setbacks, yes. Different villages have different setback requirements. 25 feet, 15 feet. Each town is different. Old school, generators in the garage. Generators in the basement. New school, no good. These items generate carbon monoxide. So it would not be a good idea to have it in or around any dwelling, obviously, where there are inhabitants. If you have a detached garage or a shed, not a problem. A basement, no, not a good idea. All the generator sets now come in outdoor enclosures. You see here, this one is in a shed. That's fine. Some of the people elevate them if they're in the flood area. That's fine. We didn't do this, but it's okay. I mean, it works. We do this. We do a lot of wood platform raising in the Hamptons. Gets it above the floodplain. These are doable things, and they work. Yes?
Anything like a property line, like the fence and everything, like from the property line, when I say there's a fence,
yes.
do you have to be a certain distance from the fence or anything like that?
The code right now, the village code is property line, not fence. But it is more an issue of noise. Most villages accept the generator set 68 dBA at the property line. So you can be at the property line as long as it's 68 dBA. Now that becomes a function of the village inspector, but that seems to be what's acceptable. That is our push when we do presentations to the village inspectors. Some people don't have 25 feet, and the setback requirement is 20. Well, I'm putting it 5 feet away from the side of my house. I don't have a backyard. You won't let me put it in the front. You're depriving me of a generator. I'll just make sure that the generator set is 68 dBA at the property line. Most generators from the factory now meet that requirement. So there's a way around it.
Do you have to have a CO for that, or a permit? In other words, if you go into a house, how do you know if it's legal?
Well, you would need to know what the setback requirement is before you get to the house.
I mean, the fact that they have a generator. How do you know they have permission from the town?
You need a variance.
A variance?
It has to be on a permit.
A variance.
Yes. If it does not meet code without a variance, you need to see the variance. We'll get into that a little bit later. Okay. Outdoor generator in a steel enclosure, that's the way they come now. Many of them come in aluminum. There should be no air transfer between living space and the generator. You talked about that a little bit. We get some more risk of fire or CO2. The generator set should not be building. Indoors is not recommended. You need to have ventilation. So let's say you put it in your shed, and it's either a radiator-cooled or an air-cooled machine. You still need to have a way in and a way out for air. A lot of machines picture before showed an open set, meaning it did not have an enclosure on it. Those machines are typically used in a shed. So ventilation, big, whether it's indoors, in the basement, or outdoors in a shed, or you still find many machines in garages. They need to be ventilated, not only for cooling air, but exhaust. Big thing, exhaust. Now, you have an exhaust pipe. The typical temperature of an exhaust pipe for a generator set is 400 degrees. Now, we have a 400 degree pipe going through a wall, which is not different than when you put a freestanding fireplace that you find in a room through the house of a room. It's got to be the same type of a thimble. It needs to be an air space between the hot surface and the construction material. Okay, see this? This is a pit. I want to talk about that a second. Hamptons, pits. Everything's in the pit in the Hamptons. If you could put the house in the pit, they would put the house in the pit. They want to see grass and trees and the geese that go all over the lawn. Pits. Big problem for generators. Why? Because the architects build them 1 foot bigger than the generator. What are you supposed to do with that? First off, how do you service it? I don't know. So secondly is drainage. I can't tell you how many times we go because the homeowner calls us and says, my generator set's not working because now it's a submarine. There's 4 feet of water in the bottom of the pit and the generator is half submerged. Whoever designed the pit did not design for proper drainage. So we discourage the use of permits. Will you find it? Yes. If you go to the job site and you see a generator set under a grate, let's talk about that a second. Code says it has to be covered with a grate. You have to have a grate. You can't have an open hole where you could trip. Okay, so it has to be covered with a grate. You need to have access. Ventilation, code doesn't care about ventilation. So if you only have 1 foot all the way around it, that's tough. But it has to have drainage. You have an electrical device that needs to be drained if it's raining. So you need to either inquire about the drainage or actually see something that shows you that this machine can drain if it rains. Okay. Generator location and environment. All right. Here we have, this is a machine. This is a Kohler machine. It's on a concrete pad. This is another Kohler machine. This is on a poly pad. This is another machine. This is on a poly pad. Here's a concrete pad. Here's another concrete pad. At the end of the day, the pad absorbs the generator vibration. Look for proper space and airflow around the set. Some smaller units come on poly pads. Talk about pads for a second. It has to be on the pad. Railroad ties doesn't work. We see a lot of generator sets that are on railroad ties. Can it be on patio blocks? As long as the patio blocks are level and have elevation above grade so that when it rains, the water doesn't infiltrate the generator set base. So you need some type of a pad. Again, railroad ties doesn't work. How close should the generator set be to the home? Well, that's a 1 hour fire rule. In other words, if the generator set can contain a fire for 1 hour, you can put it right up against the house. Will the generator set manufacturer tell you the rating of their enclosure? No. So then you're stuck. There's a quandary there. So if the generator set is up against a non-combustible wall, like a brick wall, see brick here? Not a problem. Could it be a foot away? That's not a problem. Most town inspectors will not give you a headache. If you're next to a cedar shake, vinyl siding, 3 to 5 feet is really where you need to be away. 3 to 5 feet. 5 feet is perfect. 3 feet, you're pushing the envelope. Can it work for you? Yes. So you need to be really, really careful of that. We have seen vinyl siding melt from the generator set being 6 inches away from the vinyl siding. Not a safe issue.
What about foliage?
Okay, foliage. Foliage doesn't necessarily burn, but we don't really find too much of an issue with the foliage catching on fire or burning. We don't have that much of an issue with the towns. I mean, if it's up against the machine like hemlocks grow like wildfire. You know, today it's fine. 2 weeks from now, you have a forest. So if it gets too close to the machine, it will restrict the airflow, and you really need to be careful of that. The towns like to see foliage around the generator so that it improves on the appearance, but that does not mean up against the generator. Our rule from the service side of the equation, 2 feet. We need 2 feet to service this generator properly. So if you want to put a tree, at least give us 2 feet.